It was a big weekend in Athens, but honestly, the fireworks got started before the weekend because on Wednesday, UGA landed the 5-star linebacker, Zayden Walker. Not just any 5-star linebacker, the #1 linebacker in America, but yet another big visit weekend was on tap, and we're gonna break it all down. I got On3 Steve Wiltfong here to give up the 5-star Georgia intel. But first, UGA fans, make sure you guys are subscribed to the best recruiting channel on YouTube, On3 Recruits. All right, let's bring on Steve Wiltfong. Now, Georgia landed a commit from the #1 linebacker, Zayden Walker, but the Dogs are not done. 2 top targets at the linebacker position on campus this weekend. 1 Tavian Wallace, 1 Ty Jackson, #3 and #6 linebackers, respectively, in America. What are you hearing coming out of this one?
Well, I think Georgia's in the top 2, if not at the top of the list for these blue-chip second-level defenders. Let's start with TJ first. We got a chance to spend time with him and his family at the On3 Elite Series, and he listed about 10 schools that were still squarely in play for him. But I got the sense talking to him and his family, Georgia and Alabama are 2 schools that I think are real heavy in that one. And then talking to some sources that spent time with him and his family in Athens this weekend, Georgia is in fantastic shape to ultimately land him. This is one of their most coveted targets on the board, regardless of position, track record of development, intensity of the coaching staff, track record, culture around the locker room are all things catching the prospect and his family's eye. And then with Tavian wants to hear his name called in the first round of the NFL draft. It's one of his big goals. And Georgia, they can point towards several linebackers that they've had under Coach Schumann, Coach Kirby Smart and company that have been drafted extremely high. So I think that's track record of success. His older brother going through it at Kentucky and hearing his name called in the 3rd round of the NFL draft. They know what it takes to be a Sunday caliber player, and they know Georgia is a place that can get the best out of you.
All right, so Steve, just over a week ago, we were with Tavian Wallace at the On3 Elite event here in Nashville, and we all kind of felt that Florida State was the perceived leader heading into the summer visits. How are you feeling about Tavian Wallace now that this Georgia visit has taken place?
Well, I think Georgia continues to give him a lot to think about. This is not going to be a slam dunk for Florida State, and Florida's in there too. And the Gators are having great official visits with some of their top targets. Caleb Cunningham's a 5-star receiver that loved his experience this weekend. But back to Tavian, it is not going to be an easy road for Florida State to land him. They've certainly done a great job. They're one of the front runners, if not the front runner, going into this Georgia visit. But the Bulldogs continue to give him a lot to think about. And now he'll take his official visits to Florida and Florida State and go from there.
All right, now, the big visit of the weekend was #1 offensive tackle David Sanders. After taking an official visit to Clemson, it was Georgia's turn. Now, he's also been to Nebraska and South Carolina as well, but this weekend, much anticipated visit to check out the Dogs. How did it go?
Well, I talked to sources that spent time with David Sanders and his family. That sounds like it went excellent. And Georgia is a school that's always been at or near the top of his list throughout his process. They've been recruiting him for several years now. He's been to games. He's been to practices. He was at the Kirby Smart scavenger hunt a few weeks ago, and now he's back for his official visit. Georgia's track record of player development across the board, the intensity of practices, how that program gets the best out of all their players are all things that resonate. Then he also has good friends in that Georgia recruiting class that were on campus this weekend spending time with them as well, so he feels like he fits in with those guys in the locker room.
All right. Well, what's up next for David Sanders?
So he's got his upcoming official visits to Tennessee, Alabama, and Ohio State. Tennessee, Ohio State, and Georgia are the 3 programs that I think are in the best shape right now to land David Sanders. That does not mean I'm sleeping on Clemson, but I think Georgia, Ohio State, and Tennessee. And so Tennessee, they've already gotten him on campus 3 times this calendar year. Ohio State gets the last official visit. That will be his 3rd visit to Ohio State this calendar year. So there's still a lot of things happening in this recruitment. He'll continue to have dialogue with each school, and such as it is with almost every other elite prospect in the country, NIL is going to be a factor. So there's a lot of moving parts here still with David Sanders, but I think Georgia checks a lot of the boxes that he's looking for here at this point in his process. And they also continue to make his entire family feel at home in Athens, and they're making a family decision.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting intel right there. You kind of feel that there's three teams that have edged out in front, but I agree with you. Not going to discount Clemson at this point, but it does feel like those three teams kind of stick out. You did put in a new recruiting prediction machine pick, and not for David Sanders, but for an elite offensive lineman. Dontrell Glover out of Fairburn, Georgia. The 4-star was trending to FSU, but this weekend he took that official visit to Athens, and you feel like the momentum has now shifted?
Yeah, he told me Georgia's his leader, and we were kind of feeling that way coming into the visit that Georgia's been trending. He's a guy that's a take right now for Georgia as they try and build one of the elite offensive line classes in the country. And if you look at the photos of him and his mom from his official visit, he looks ready to play for the Bulldogs right now before he goes into his senior year. And he just pointed to two reasons why Georgia's the leader. He talked about their track record of player development, and they win. And he said other programs he canceled official visits to are not considering because they don't check both those boxes. So those are the two most important things for him. He loved his time in Athens. He says Georgia's the leader coming out. Now they just got to get it to the finish line.
All right. Now, there was a lot of guys in Athens. We didn't cover them all. Dogs HQ, a wonderful site on our network. They cover all things UGA, both football and recruiting. They did an incredible job of covering this weekend's official visits. So go check that out. Steve, let's talk a little Miami Hurricanes. Now, they had one of the best prospects in America on campus, Elijah Griffin, the number 1 defensive lineman in America, the number 4 prospect overall out of Savannah Christian Prep. And heading into this one, everybody thought UGA was the leader. They're the in-state team. He's the number 1 defensive lineman in America. But there was a lot of anticipation heading into this Miami visit. What are you hearing afterwards?
Well, Miami's going to pull a shocker at some point in this cycle. They have every year since Mario Cristobal's been the head football coach, and they've had Elijah Griffin on campus before. They continue to impress with the multiple defensive line coaches that they have. There's no program that's recruiting Elijah Griffin harder than Miami. I think that they have the infrastructure to be attractive for Elijah Griffin and his family as well. So they continue to take their swings and chop wood here. I'm certainly not ready to change my prediction as I talk to you this afternoon about or change it from Georgia to Miami, but Miami would be the program that if you said Elijah Griffin does not go to Georgia, where does he go? I would probably lean Miami right now over South Carolina, Florida, Oregon, Colorado, some of the others that he has shown interest in.
Yeah, what do you think about Elijah Griffin and his timeline for a decision? I mean, how many more visits does he have left, and when can we expect a final decision from him?
Well, he has several more visits on the docket. I expect him to continue to go through his process and take these visits and see what these schools have to offer, sit down with his family, look over all the opportunities that each place presents on the table, then make his decision. I just know this is a guy that Kirby Smart and Georgia and that coaching staff absolutely covet. You're talking about the Justice Terrys, the Isaiah Gibsons, the Elijah Griffins, C.J. Wiley, the wide receiver from Milton, Georgia. Those are guys that they view are able to help them continue to play the caliber of football that they're accustomed to in Athens. So it won't be an easy road for anybody to take Elijah Griffin out of the Peach State. He's got the same kind of status as a KJ Bolden did last cycle and some others. Elias Williams, who's completely locked in, the 5-star tight end from in-state, who was back at Georgia this weekend for a basketball tournament after shutting down his recruitment completely. So Georgia's not going to make it easy on anybody, but we've seen Miami pull off a shocker every year of the Cristobal era, and they'll continue to swing at Elijah Griffin.
Yeah, what is it about Mario Cristobal in this kind of uncanny ability to shock the recruiting world, especially when it comes to offensive, defensive linemen?
Well, he knows how important those are to make that the foundation of your program. That's the heartbeat of any team that Mario Cristobal leads. He's an offensive line guy at heart, which then he knows how important it is to be stout at the point of attack. Miami signed the best offensive line class in the country 2 years ago, highlighted by Francis Mauigoa, Samson Okunlola. They then come back next year and sign the top defensive line in the class, top defensive line haul in the country in the 2024 cycle, led by Justin Scott, who they flipped from Ohio State, the 5-star. That was their shocker last year. And they're going to keep going at the point of attack with multiple coaches, daily contact, showing them the trajectory of the program. They've gotten better each year. They're showing these kids the elite recruiting classes. It was a top 5 recruiting haul last year. And then the blood, sweat, and tears of recruiting, man. Again, no one's communicating more as a head coach than Mario Cristobal. He's got the support of his coaching staff. Jason Taylor's an electric recruiter with a hellacious hellacious background and resume to his name. And then I think Miami has the infrastructure to go toe-to-toe with any of these programs on the trail when you're talking about NIL and things of that nature.
Yeah, now all they got to do is put it together on the field, and boy, will this program be cooking. All right, Steve, appreciate you taking time on a busy official visit weekend, dropping by the Inside Scoop. Thank you. Well, you've made it to the end of today's video, but there's hundreds more videos on the On3 Recruits channel for you to check out, and also, while you're here, hit subscribe.